Hello, and welcome to the VP Networks tutorial for reporting and user tracking. So the user tracking will allow you to tell what users are doing and how many users you have on the system. This can be useful for troubleshooting. Also, if you want to give reports to site owners about activity on their system, or in lots of other ways, you may want to keep track of who's doing what on your system and how much they're utilizing. You may also want to keep track of the bandwidth that's being used on your system, so you can tell if you're getting close to the peak bandwidth, which can be a problem if you have a system that's exceeding what's available from your ISP. Then they'll start choking people off in a way that's not organized, so people may not be able to get on at all. So these are all reasons why you may want to track usage. You may also be doing post-paid billing, so you may need to bill based on usage. Or you also may need to do investigations in the usage. For instance, you may have a complaint under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and you may need to look at who downloaded a file on your system, when and where. So these are all things that you can track using the report system and using the user tracking systems. So the first thing that we can look at is often people look at the DHCP client table to try to figure out what's going on their system. And the thing you need to keep in mind about DHCP is that these are not logged in users. These are just devices in your area that have connected and have requested a lease. And really it could be anything, especially at a public site where any device walking by on the street can and probably will take a DHCP lease, and when they keep walking down the street, they'll never release it. So don't confuse your DHCP clients with your current users. If you've issued 1,000 DHCP leases, that doesn't mean that there's 1,000 people trying to use the site. If you find that you're getting low on DHCP leases, and the way you can tell that, especially, is that when DHCP starts to feel like it's running out of leases, you can see here we've got a lease it's about 7 days for the new leases. When the DHCP server decides that it's getting critically low, it will actually cut that lease time in half. So if you start seeing new half-size leases on your system, then you'll know that you probably don't have enough. Or if you have 1,000 leases available and there's 1,000 leases on there, or if people stop getting DHCP, these are all things that may tell you that they need more leases. The thing to do in that case is either make the leases shorter. You can do that under Networks, Server, or you can create more leases. So what do we have? So here we've got about 210 leases. This could actually be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 leases on a larger system. So that's what you can do about DHCP. Another thing that's handy on this DHCP table is you can create a pass-through entry based on a DHCP lease. This can help for devices that can't log into the system, like an Xbox or some other piece of equipment, or if you have trouble tickets for people who can't or won't get a login page. If you can figure out their IP address or their MAC address, you can pass them through as well, just by clicking on the pass-through button. It does that automatically. You don't need to reboot. So that can be good. That can be good, an easy way to handle some troubleshooting situations. So going now to look at the actual current users. This is who is logged into the system. And this is what's governed by your device license. So if you go to System Status and look at your current users, you can see I've got a 50 user license. So when this table reaches 50 users, then the system's at capacity. If additional users try to log in, they'll get an error message that says the system has reached capacity. So if you're getting reports of that error message, or if you're seeing that error message, you'll need to get a larger license key for the unit, so you can support more users. Useful things you can see in the user table. There's not too many people on this test unit. As you can see, the idle time, that'll tell you users who haven't done anything recently and how long it's been since they did something. Also to give you their total usage as well as kind of an average. This can be a good place to look if you're getting reports that the system is slow or having other kinds of issues. You can see if you've got a few users who are using up a ton of bandwidth, or if people say that they can't log in. This is a place you can look to see if they're logged in already, and maybe they're just confused, that they've got an old cached login page, or aren't connected for some other reason that's not related to the login process specifically. From this, similar to the DHCP client, you can terminate people from this dialog. You can also add them to the blacklist. I'll probably need to log in again now, since I just terminated myself. Alright. And if I refresh now, I'll be back in with my usage reset. So this is a good place to keep track. You can terminate people. Whether you want to blacklist people, that'll keep them from connecting at all. But if you do find you're having problem users, you can terminate them from this dialog. In this table, you'll see any named users, so anyone who logs in using an account, using a named account. Also, if you're using on the PMS system, you'll see names and rune numbers here. If you're using Radius, you'll see whatever the Radius name that was used was. And even if you're using automatic authentication, you'll see an entry here that'll just say NA, but you'll still be able to see the IP address and the MAC address, and you'll be able to see what each one of those users is doing. For instance, on my system, if I had 1,000 people logged in as guest, which does happen on some systems where there's just a single shared account, you would see all 1,000 users listed here individually, and you could tell what they were all doing as individuals. The only connections that will not appear in this table is if you do create a pass-through using this dialog or from the security tab. If you manually create a pass-through for someone, either by IP address or MAC address. Those devices do not get logged in. They just get added to the firewall manually, so you won't see them as current users. So just something to keep in mind if you are interested in what users are doing, but they're not, but they're in the pass-through table, so you can't see them as current users. Another place you can track user activity, and this will include pass-through users as well as on the connection tracker. And this will basically show you Contrack is kind of a standard Linux application. Shows you all the TCP connections that are open and what they're doing. So this can be another place to look for troubleshooting purposes. See if you have a lot of strange, source and destination ports, or if you have one user who's opening a lot of connections. And this will show your pass-through users as well. In most cases, you probably won't need to use this for ordinary tracking of user activity. So another place that you can look when you're interested in what users are doing is you can go to the bandwidth graph. And what this will show you is the overall system usage. So all the traffic going from WAN to LAN and vice versa. So you can, my test system's not actually that interesting. Currently it's scaled to the bandwidth settings. So under networks, WAN, LAN, I've got a bandwidth setting here. So this is what my table is scaled to by default. But if I go back, I can scale it by the usage, and this kind of gives me a better sense of what the spikes are. So if you have this set to your bandwidth settings and you see that you're getting close to the top of the graph, that's going to tend to indicate you probably don't have enough bandwidth. You probably don't want to see this get more than maybe 3/4 of the way up to your, to the maximum throughput on your system, just so you don't have anybody who can't connect at all. So for this table, you can look at the LAN or WAN connections. You can also see the number of connected users, either by automatically scaling it. Looks like my max has been about 5 users recently, or based on your license count. And again, this can be a place where if this table is kind of getting up close to your license count, which is 50 in my case, you may not have enough licenses. And people are going to get that system has reached capacity message, which is going to make them pretty mad. The other thing that's nice on here is you can download a CSV file if you want to import this into Excel or Crystal Reports, or generate reports based on any of these activities, either WAN or LAN usage or user activity. You could show that in a nice Excel format, or format it however you wanted. So the next place that you can look for user activity is the connection log. And what the connection log does is it actually records every TCP connection. So every time someone opens up a connection to a website or a device on the WAN side of the unit, and the LAN side as well, but we're primarily interested in the WAN side, you will get a record here that shows that. So every web page, every file download, all of those will create a TCP connection that will get logged in this dialog. As you can imagine, on sites that have hundreds of megabits of throughput, this file gets tremendously large. So this file is not stored on the controller locally. This file has to be exported to your TFTP server. In this case, this is actually pointing at the VP Networks TFTP server. And we do have a service where we can store all of your logs for you and allow you to keep them and search them. Again, this comes in useful if you need to do troubleshooting, or especially if you get a law enforcement request under CALIA, or if you get a DMCA copyright complaint. This will allow you to have a record of the last few months or years that you can search through, so you can comply with those requests. You can certainly use your own TFTP server for this, or like I said, VP Networks also hosts a TFTP report portal that you can use. So another place that you can get user information in a separate system is using syslog. And system log will give you uptime reports, and it'll give you debugging reports if you select that as well. But specific to users, you can get reports on logged in users, where every 60 minutes your syslog server can get a complete report on who's logged in, for how long, what they did. You can also get reports when users log in and out. And we've had some customers make very cool systems where they kind of track users coming and going, and rather than using our report system, they've built their own report system based on syslog. So if you like syslog, this might be something that you're interested in. If not, then probably the report portal or the TFTP based user reports you'll find to be easier to use than syslog. Syslog comes out as kind of a text document. We've also had some customers use this for post-paid processing, where they're charging people per month for access based on the number of bytes that they sent or the amount of time that they logged in. That could be collected from syslog and processed through some kind of an automated text filtering process to generate reports. So we definitely have customers who have done that. If you do want to use the more CSV Excel style reports, you can enable that here under subscriber sessions. So this will give you a report for every subscriber session, which is a login and a log out, and you get how much time and how much data was used during that period. Again, this is pointing at the VP Networks report portal, but you could certainly point this at your own TFTP server and process these reports yourself. So once this is enabled, then on the system status page, um, you'll be able to see the reports that are collected on the device. So the way the session reports work is they report a user's activity after they log out. So if you look at this table and say we look at the daily report for today, there's not too much going on on this test unit. These are the sessions that connected and disconnected. If I want to see current users, I have to look at the current user table. So this is me right now. Looking at the report, this is me a few minutes ago. So just keep that in mind, that those two, they won't match up until everyone logs out, or if you reboot the controller, then all the current sessions will get terminated and they'll all get reported into these reports. These reports are stored for 60 days, so you can go back up to 2 months. If you want more data than that, you'll need to export it to your TFTP server or use our VP Networks report portal. But we can take a look, at the monthly report for last December, and this will show, everybody who connected using those accounts. So to use the reports themselves, if you click on, so you've got daily, weekly reports, and then monthly reports. The contents are the same, just they cover longer or shorter periods. If you want to see the full report, you can just click on the day. This will show you everybody who connected and had a closed session, how long it was when they logged in, what their MAC address was, what their usage was. These can all be filtered using various, either ascending or descending. And this can also be useful for troubleshooting. If you get, get reports that the system is slow, you can get on here and see who your most active users were, and maybe, if they're too active, or if you have, DMCA complaints, you can get in here and see who's, uploading and downloading the most data. Especially if you look at a longer term report, you can get a better sense of, who's doing what. So if I look at, the usage, these were kind of looks like this was the biggest data users. And you'll see in here some of these are listed as NA. So those are users who were connected under automatic authentication. This test unit probably switched back and forth. So some users are in as guest, some are in as NA. But you can see the usage and the IP addresses and the MAC addresses, which is the information that you want to make sure you can get. So in addition to getting the full report, you can also filter it by host, and the host is the MAC address, and that tells you a specific device. So one phone, one tablet, one laptop will have a unique host address. So if you're interested in just tracking the hosts or sorting by hosts, you can click on hosts. Also, if you're just interested in seeing the users, let's go back to that monthly report. Then you can kind of see the activity on those two accounts. You can see these are shared accounts, so there's multiple logins for multiple hosts. If you had individual accounts or room-based accounts, or if you're using the PMS, you would only see a single host for these. And in those cases, it gives you more ability to track what exactly those users are doing. So another way you can use these reports is for troubleshooting. If you have reports that people can't log in, or sometimes people say, I keep getting kicked off the internet, this is some place you can see exactly who was connected, how they connected, and why they were disconnected. So you could look for general trends. Or if you have specific users, you can research when they were connected and why they were disconnected. And you may find that they just have a bunch, either that maybe there's a bunch of reboot messages and someone was pulling the plug on the unit and everyone's getting kicked off. You may see a lot of idle timeout messages, just meaning that users, weren't doing anything. And in some cases, hotels may want to have a longer idle timeout, so people only have to log in once a day or once a week or once a month, whatever that time period is. Another thing you can look for is you might see things like lost service. And what this means is that someone's DHCP lease was still active, but somebody else logged in with their IP address. And when that happens, the current login is closed and a new account is created. So this can indicate either just DHCP problems, or especially if your DHCP leases are shorter than your idle timeout, then you're going to end up with open accounts that aren't associated with that IP address anymore. And that can cause errors in the system. So make sure that whatever you're using for your idle timeout on the networks page, so here's my idle timeout, make sure that your DHCP leases are at least that long or longer, so you don't have strange behavior in the authentication system as people try to log in with the same IP address to the same account. So that pretty much covers what's in the gateway controller. So the next thing we can look at is what the report portal looks like. So this is the VP Networks, the hosted report portal. Once your units are set up, they'll send all the reports here, and then you can see, here's a demo that has, 2, 4, 6, 8, about 10 sites that are all, together. Let's see, let's get back to my demo account. So this can be useful if you have multiple sites that you're tracking. You can have them all, stored in a single interface. We keep all these user reports. They're all searchable. There's no time limit on them. So instead of 60 days, let's see what I've got. I think I've got a couple years worth of reports for some of these demo sites. You can also search through them. So if I have a site and I need to get, I have a request from Kalia, or I need to figure out what happened on a particular day, it makes it very easy to do a search. There's lots of options to search by time, but let's say I just want to see what happened on the 15th between noon and 5 o'clock. Oh, didn't give a site. Let's see. Let's make it an extra day. Maybe there's not enough records for that. There we go. So I can see all of my users who logged in during that time period and what they did. I can filter by it. If I just want to see one IP, I could put it here. If I'm just interested in one host. Again, this can be exported to CSV if you wanted to create a custom report or wanted to log it or process it in some other way using something like Excel. In addition, all those session logs that we talked about, where you could collect a record of every session that aren't stored locally on the gateway, those can be stored in this interface as well. And where this can be really useful is if you do get a request you have to comply with, like a law enforcement request, that they want to know, every website that was requested from a particular room on a particular day. Or also in the case of if you get a copyright complaint, the copyright complaint will be passed to you by your internet service provider under the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And then you'll need to be able to show, just like your ISP passes it on to you because it's not their problem, you need to be able to show, that it wasn't an employee of the hotel that was downloading files. You need to be able to show that it was a guest and that file is not available anymore. So here's a typical what a DMCA complaint looks like. It looks like this one's from 20th Century Fox, complaining about a movie download, but this could be other kinds of files that people download. Could be a music file, could be anything. But to respond to this complaint, then I need to figure out this IP address will almost certainly be the IP address of the site. So in this case, it was a hotel. I think this is what is this, a Travel Inn. So this is the IP address of the Travel Inn, so that's not going to help us. If you have static IPs configured, in theory, one of those IPs could come up here, but you can track those as well. But in most cases, this will be the IP address of the hotel. And the only thing you have is a port, and you have a timestamp. Now, most devices that are NATed don't have any way of tracking the activity on a particular port. So there's no way to prove that this wasn't, the hotel general manager who was downloading Jennifer's body. But if you have a record on the gateway controller, you can go to your session log. Let's look at the timestamp. So this was on January the 12th, and it was at 2010. Now, the way TCP sessions work is they don't always, so this one's got 2010 and 43 seconds. That session may, have opened or closed, a little bit before or a little bit after. There's a certain duration to TCP sessions. So we can do a search. Maybe we'll do a search for those 60 seconds and see what we get. And maybe we know that this is EAV. If we do a search, then we can see. Oh wait, I think we're on. Let's see. So we need the connection log. Let's try that on the connection log. So we'll put in the same search. For about 2010 through 2011 for the same site. Let's see what that gives us. All right, so here's all the TCP/C sessions that were happening at that site. In that, in that minute of activity. Oh, this one's going to be too long. There we go. So all we need to do is let's look for port 34112. So we'll filter by port. And then, okay, so here's 34112 from 201042 to 201043. That matches what we have here, 201043. So now we know that this file was downloaded by someone with this IP address, this MAC address, which would identify their device if it was a laptop or an iPhone. And on this particular site, it looks like they've actually organized the rooms by VLAN ID. So in this case, we even know that this is room 107. So depending how much detail you need to provide, you have all the information here based on the TCP connection log. In addition, if you're using a PMS system, you would have the room number and last name as the user ID as well. So this really gives you really great security and really gives you the ability to respond to some of these requests for information about user activity that may come in. Another great feature of this VP Networks report portal is you can also create sub-accounts. So say the manager of that particular hotel wants to log in and see his own reports or do his own research, you can create him a user account that only includes his specific site. So we could add that. So now he can log in to the report portal himself just to see his sites. So it's really a great service. It's a good way to store all these reports that can take up a lot of space, and you don't have to manage a TFTP server. So we really recommend this as a service. So that pretty much wraps up user reports and tracking users. I hope this was useful. Please give us, send us any questions or any comments to Value Point Networks. And thank you for watching our tutorial.